Christian and non-Christian paranormal investigators. They have two different views, and it seems as if neither of them can ever agree on anything. So what happens when a mainstream view of the paranormal crosses paths with the Christian view? Something epic. This is ParaTruth Radio.
What's up, folks? Welcome back to a brand new episode of ParaTruth Radio. My name is Erik.
And I'm Justin.
And today, unfortunately, it's sad to say, but also kind of a much needed little thing. This is our last episode before our 6-month hiatus. We will be back in October, possibly sooner, but we will let you know. Don't worry. We'll still be on Facebook. We'll still be on Instagram. We'll still be reaching out to you guys and talking to you guys. But unfortunately, Justin's work is a little bit of a pain in the bum lately. So it's hard to find time to record between our schedules. So yeah, we are going to be going on break after this episode. So today we're going to have some fun. We're going to begin by just kind of doing a wrap up for this last series / season. And then, I don't know, we'll see where it goes. But it will be a relatively shorter episode today. And that's that. So this season, we talked about cryptids in particular. And I can't even, like, it's some of these seasons, even if they're short, seem so long because there's so many weeks in each of them. And it's hard to remember what we talked about in this past season. But I know there's cryptids. I know we talked about werewolves. I know we talked about Bigfoot and
series one was spiritual lycanthropy, spiritual vampires, and the interdimensional Bigfoot.
That's right. So those are all very interesting topics, by the way, if I do say so myself. And then, of course, we finished out, as you know, last week with the Cryptids by state, which we didn't do many, and we apologize for that. We had more. We were planning on more, but again, just scheduling is becoming an issue. So we're going to have to go ahead and cut that short. But we did talk about cryptids in Ohio. We talked about cryptids in Washington, and that's it. I think we only did 2 states. So overall, like, what was one of your favorite things that we spoke about this season then on PTR?
I think one of the most interesting for me was doing the states. Bat Squatch we did last week on Washington State. I think it was Lakeland Frogman or something like that.
So I think it was.
The Frogman was an interesting one because the explanation that one particular person gave was he actually saw an iguana. And to me, like I said in that episode, doesn't make any more like a sense than a large frogman than seeing an iguana in the middle of Ohio.
Right. Was it Lake Lick? You said Lick, and I was like, maybe that's what it was. Not Lakeland, but Lake Lick. Is there a Lake Lick? I don't know.
There was a not Lake Lick, but something Lick monster. I can't remember the name.
Okay. Loveland was where the frog was.
Loveland,
Ohio.
Okay. And then there was a couple of weird ones for Ohio, more so than Washington State, I believe. But the Frogman is the only one that sticks out for me. Was there anything that you found interesting?
I always really enjoy the spiritual stuff, the spiritual vampires and werewolves that we spoke about. I thought were very interesting things. Even the spiritual aspect of the Bigfoot, for that matter, which of course is always super interesting because the Bigfoot one is both like considered spiritual, but can also be considered interdimensional, or extraterrestrial. And I think that's where we kind of started getting towards with like even the some of the Bigfoot stuff. Yeah, so I think those are some of my favorite ones that we spoke about. In regards to the states, I think there's a lot that are really interesting in Ohio, and I think the Charles Mills Lake Monster I think was really interesting because that was like really like lined up with an alien, supposedly UFO sighting. Yeah. Not too long before that, with a weird colored beam and whatnot. And I think that was probably one of my favorite stories we talked about, or one of the most interesting. I think it lined right up with the lake monster aspect of it, because I know there's only one sighting of this so-called alien like creature 9 feet tall or whatever, and the rest were linked to the lake itself. But I think that there was a lot of similarities between the stories, and it's curious to think of what it could be. If there was indeed a UFO sighting before then, could that creature have been in fact an alien? And if so, why was it left there? Was it by accident? Was it out of fear? Was it there for a specific reason? I mean, I don't know, but it was definitely an interesting story, I think, that we talked about.
Yeah. Well, the Crosswick monster is the lick monster I think you were trying to think of.
Oh, okay.
And that kind of coincided with the frogmen because they were only 20 miles apart. But the Crosswick monster, I believe there was only the one sighting, but it had 60 different people that saw it. And then I believe there was a link between the orange eyes and the Charles Mills Lake monster, I want to say.
Yeah, see, all of that, like all of what you just said is what I'm thinking, but not able to process and talk about because they're all becoming one jumbled mess in my mind. So all of those, though, were very similar and very well could be the same creature, alien or otherwise. So those were all interesting.
One of the episodes that I really liked was the Mayan cryptid episode. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to remember the one that you had come across where it was basically this shaman taking off his head, growing ear-like wings.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember which one that was? Yeah, the Chan is the name of the cryptid that I was thinking of, the human head that has ears for wings, that looked rather interesting in the depictions. But was there anything that stuck out to you for the Mayan?
Yeah, the Alu was one of my favorite because, I mean, this was pretty simple and kind of similar to like leprechauns and some of the other fairy-like creature that we've talked about in the past. But what I really enjoyed about this one was the idea that you would summon it to protect your crops, and after 7 years, if you didn't pay your end, it would then turn around and start to trick you and terrorize you and things like that. And I think that's really interesting because the majority of these fairy things that we read about, they're just there to trick you or to mess with you. But in this case, you have a working relationship with one once you summon it. And then you can either have a peaceful resolution where the two of you go separate ways, or it can end up attacking you if you don't pay up your end of the bargain. So I thought that was really interesting. It was like this goblin-ish like creature that particularly worked around the maize fields. It would basically build its home right in the center and then scare off predators or creatures that would come by to eat it or try to destroy the crops. So that was definitely one of my favorite, I think, that we talked about in the Mayan cryptids.
It kind of lines up with the legends of brownies, or I believe gnomes as well, because they would help shoemakers with making shoes, and it was kind of the same thing. You'd have to appease them in the sense by leaving them treats or goodies, liquor, which is interesting. And so yeah, it's interesting that and the Huaychivo, which is the equivalent to the goat man that we have heard about more recently here in the U.S., how both of those coincide with a cryptid that we already know. So,
right.
And I believe the Huaychivo and the Chan were both linked to shaman or witchcraft of some kind in South American lore, because the practitioner would turn themselves into these creatures.
Right.
So, one that we really didn't touch a whole lot on, because we have in the past, and it doesn't really link to Mayan culture, but more recent, is the chupacabra. But there really is no link to the past, other than where it originally was cited in Mexico, and that we had on Ben Radford, who had talked about there was this woman who had just seen species, and that's where he thinks that her sighting came from. She was scared from the movie. She left the movie theater and saw something, but imprinted this species alien creature onto whatever she saw.
Right.
So.
Yep. I remember when we spoke about that out of our Chupacabra episode, probably like 3 years ago. Yeah, it's good stuff. I think another one that was really interesting too was actually, it wasn't so much a part of, like, it wasn't so much the episode, but it was at the beginning of the episode when I mentioned the werewolf sightings in Brazil and in South America, and that we found out that after some research, the eyewitnesses were actually seeing a maned wolf, which was a odd sight in the areas that this particular werewolf was found or came to be. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of the sightings and the eyewitness accounts really matched the maned wolf very well. And once they actually found the maned wolf, it kind of helped put a seal on that. A little disappointing that it wasn't actually a werewolf that people were seeing, but also probably a good thing. So that's cool. Maned wolves are making their way back into certain territories. But also sad because their territories were originally taken away from them to begin with. So
yeah, the funny thing is the maned wolf isn't even really a wolf. It's
right
from the genus Chrysocyan, which I honestly
it's actually its own. It's its own genes. It doesn't have a shareable gene with any other canine or creature that we know of. So it's a standalone creature.
The interesting thing from that, though, is that CCTV photo that we talked about on that news thing as well,
right? Because
as far as we can see, it almost looks like somebody in some type of costume or something because of the gait and it almost, you said, look like human-like hands, right?
Yeah, it's the coloring, because obviously that photo is super fuzzy. But even then, you can still see a distinct discoloration between what would be considered its fur and whatever its hand is. Its hand is significantly lighter in color. And one could think maybe they're white hands, white paws, something like that. But it just doesn't match the typical werewolf description. Neither does red fur. As the majority of werewolf descriptions are either black fur or really dark brown fur.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, even if it being red fur, just the hands in particular just It's an odd color. It's very much off from the rest of the creature. So I don't know. Like again, it's hard to tell because it's just a single photo, a fuzzy photo at that. Now if it were a video, then there would be multiple frames. We should be able to see more than one frame and even actually see the full video playback, but there's not that either. So there's a very good chance that it was simply faked.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Well, our friend Kat had mentioned that it looked like it could be photoshopped, but in my opinion, if it was photoshopped, I would think that we would have had a little more clearer image.
Well, I mean, maybe, but here's the thing, and I think it makes sense from her standpoint, is when you're doing a Photoshop of a cryptid, you know, obviously if you made it nice and clear, you're going to see very fine details, and those details you'll be able to sink in, look, you know, like get in closer to it, zoom in, and see where lines are made with stencils or pencils, you know, things like that you would normally use in like a Photoshop thing. And by making it super blurry, it basically takes away any possibility or a significant chance of someone figuring out that it was indeed a manipulation of some Photoshop work, you know, some computer-generated image. And I don't know. I mean, I think you're both on the right page. I just feel like, I mean, I'm personally, obviously, I think it is fake, but...
Well, yeah, I think it is fake as well, whether it's photoshopped or somebody in a costume or something.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting, though, about it is like the light sources are pretty much spot on. You know, I mean, there's obviously a bright light on the building across from it, and it's creating a shadow off this creature in the same direction that the light would be spreading. So that's all correct. So we have the light sources that are right. We have a couple of different things that seem pretty correct here. I don't know. It could be photoshopped. Maybe someone photoshopped it in there, blurred it up real good to get rid of the edges that you would normally get after cutting an image from another photo. It could also be a toy in a little model, you know, like a model of a town. They could have taken a werewolf toy and plopped it right down there in the model. Because again, it doesn't look like there's much movement to it. It looks very stationary. It looks like it's standing, despite the fact that its arms and its legs are moving or in a movement pattern. It doesn't actually show any movement forward. You know, there's no real clear blur or movement of the creature's arms. It almost looks like it's just there in place. It'd be easier to explain this and show you if I actually had a model with me to show you what the difference is between a moving picture or something that would be caught in a movement and something that's just a still image that you're taking a picture of. But
that was the only thing out of that little segment that we did that was the most interesting, because there were werewolf accounts, but all of them, as far as we saw, were explained by the main wolf sightings.
Right.
But people had never seen the main wolf before, so they didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, was there any others that you found interesting from the past several weeks?
No, I think those are pretty much my main, the ones that I particularly like the most. What about you?
Well, the thing that I found fascinating was that the two states that we were able to get done, both Ohio and Washington, have Bigfoot sightings. We had found out going through the obscure cryptids that there are Bigfoot sightings outside of the U.S. as well, or I should say south, because we were originally thinking that it was more isolated to mountainous like areas, but there have been some in South America, some in Africa. We all know of the sightings in Asia, because that's where the Yeti legends come from. So it's interesting that is one of the cryptids that spans multiple continents. And I think that's fascinating to me because, and that could be too, that people travel, migrate to different areas, and they bring their legends with them. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good possibility as well. And I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit, doing different cryptid episodes, is that when a certain people group move to an area, they bring those legends with them, and eventually people that would not have been familiar with them end up starting to see these creatures. So right. I think that's a good point to bring up about all of the episodes we've done in the past season, as well as different cryptids that we've talked about in the past almost 5 years now, doing ParaTruth Radio as well. So anything else on this season that you needed to touch base on?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with ParaTruth Radio.
Hey everyone, I'm Kat Ward, host of Paranormal Heart, your monthly paranormal podcast. Join me the last Sunday of every month as I speak to people who share their paranormal experiences. You can follow me on Podbean, YouTube, TuneIn, iTunes, Spotify, and Paranormal Radio.
There are spirits everywhere, watching, waiting, seeking that opportune time to reveal themselves like no other. They fill our worlds with so much.
Seriously? You didn't just do that. You farted on the promo? What's wrong with you? I thought you were a professional. Go away. Go. I got it. Hey everybody, it's Brian Bowden, host of Nobo Boomy, where we explore deep inside the Goblin universe. We have an amazing show that covers the paranormal, conspiracies, music, art, entertainment, trending topics, and so much more. Please join us by subscribing to the show on Podbean at InsideTheGoblinUniverse.podbean.com, on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and everywhere you find podcasts. It's an informative, fun, and overall entertaining good time, and we'll keep the gas to ourselves. Why don't you burp next time? Somebody get me Brian Anderson.
What's up, folks, and welcome back to ParaTruth Radio. As always, my name is Erik.
And I'm Justin.
And this is our final episode before our short hiatus of about 6 months. All we're doing today is just kind of wrapping up this last season, and I think we pretty much did just that. We covered some pretty basic things that we thought were most interesting to us. And, of course, as always, we want you guys to join us on Instagram and Facebook and pretty much anywhere where you can write us or talk to us, email, chat. Otherwise, we want to know what your favorite things were we talked about this week or this whole season as well. Did you like the things that we liked, some of this werewolves or some of the Mayan cryptids or the spiritual cryptids? Did you like something else? Do you have an opinion or a thought about something that we didn't cover? Definitely. Please feel free to reach out to us. We will still be in touch, even though we're going to be on a hiatus from the show itself airing. We're still going to be around on Facebook and in all the social media things. So we're going to be definitely posting some interesting, fun stuff for everybody, new topics and things that we'll eventually cover. But yeah.
Well, I think that even if you guys want to reach out to us and tell us what you want us to cover starting in October, we will probably be doing just our usual holiday stuff that we do every year. But I would love to hear what you guys want to hear about. I mean, we've covered Halloween 5 years in a row now. So if you'd want to hear something different as far as the spooky season is concerned, let us know. I would love to know what you guys want to hear. Yeah, and I will try and make sure that I'm posting articles that I find interesting. Maybe Eric and I can touch base on those when we come back as well, because doing the stuff that we do, and we've talked about this on air as well as off air, it can become a little mundane because talking about the same things over and over again, it gets to the point where you're beating a dead horse. So if we come across any articles, maybe next season we'll concentrate on articles that we come across in that that area of time, whether it's October or if we do end up coming back sooner, because it would be interesting to, like Eric did like you said before the break, we did the little segment on the Brazilian werewolf. So it would be interesting to bring that into more of a full length episode where we talk about some of the odd news that's been going on in the past months when we come back. So, is there anything that we've done in the past or that we haven't done in the past couple seasons that you would want to see us talking about when we come back?
I think I'd like to cover more occult type stuff, whether that be various religions or just occult practices and how those practices, why they're considered taboo. I think that would be an interesting thing. I know you and I have talked about talking about that kind of stuff and just hadn't really brought it up much. So I think that's something that'd be really cool, kind of get into the history of witchcraft and that kind of stuff, following those lines for a while. And I think our listeners, unless you guys disagree, I think would also be pretty interested in that kind of stuff too. So that's the main thing. I know this summer, one of my big plans is to actually scope out some new things to talk about. It's interesting, but seasons, like even for the paranormal, it's a seasonal thing. So depending on the season, whether it's summer, spring, fall, winter, you name it, things will come up more often than others. So I'm looking forward to see what late spring and summer bring forth paranormal wise that might be new to discuss. And I have a whole ton of books. I've got 100+ books of paranormal stuff that I'm going to look through and hopefully find some new things that we can talk about. Because I definitely want to. I know some of our stuff is relatively repetitive. Some of the things we talk about. I mean, new information for sure, but it's still the same creatures or the same aspect to this stuff. So I think this next 6 months is going to be a bit of a renewal for both of us and the show in particular. And with that said, I think our very first episode back most likely is going to be a nice big blowout party. So it's not going to be anything specific, but it'll be the reintroduction to a new season, but with the good old fashioned PTR everything. So,
well, what we could do for that episode, and again, you guys can chime in and let us know, is maybe we can get some listener feedback or insight, or maybe even get some recorded clips from our listeners and get some feedback from them or ideas on their opinions about some of the things that we talked about in the past as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think that posting them in comments is one thing. Actually talking about them is completely different, because in a comment or a text or anything else, you lose the connotation, you lose the emotional tone to somebody's voice by just typing it out. So, I mean, unless somebody puts, I'm typing this with anger, it may sound angry, but they're not being angry or judgmental or anything like that. It just sounds like that through a typed thing. So So yeah, definitely something to look forward to and look into. So if you guys are interested in doing the bring back episode with where you guys get to be a part of the episode with us, I would love to have that happen for you guys. So is there any announcements or anything on your end before we end season 7?
Paranormal wise, no. I think we're good. I'm good.
All right, folks. As Erik put, we are going to be on hiatus for 6 months, maybe less, but we'll let you know that in the coming months. We'll be posting on social media as well as just in general. Make sure you're listening to past episodes, keeping up on all the stuff. If you're not a part of the Plus Club, definitely get a part of that, because I'm going to be continuing to post past seasons from season 1 to season 5. And there is a lot of episodes to go through, over 100 plus, because we are on episode 219 now for this ending of season 7. So a lot of episodes to catch up on. There are episodes of Crime Crack up there. Maybe once we come back in October, we will be able to start doing more of those as well, because we did only end up getting 3 episodes up there for Crime Crack. So until then, you will find us same time, same channel, because there will be archives. My name is Justin.
And I'm Erik. Peace.
This